My name is Felipe McManus, 26, a software developer in Austin, Texas. I lived in my parents' converted garage apartment, grinding 12-hour days and paying $2,200 monthly toward their mortgage while saving every spare penny for my own place. It wasn't glamorous, but I had $85,000 saved and a dream house picked out in East Austin. Life was disciplined, focused, and finally heading somewhere. Then, my older sister Ethel showed up at 2 a.m. with 3 crying kids, designer luggage, and a sob story about escaping her toxic marriage. Within hours, she'd taken over the main house, and suddenly, everyone expected me to bankroll her fresh start. The woman who'd blown through a 6-figure divorce settlement in 8 months now needed my life savings to get back on her feet. "Family takes care of family, Felipe," Dad said during our first family meeting, his arms crossed, like this was already decided. "She needs $15,000 to get back on her feet." I stared at him, my stomach dropping. "That's my entire emergency fund, Dad. What about her taking care of herself?" The look he gave me could have frozen hell over. Mom started crying. Ethel played the victim card, using her kids as human shields. And me? I was suddenly the villain for wanting to protect the money I'd bled for. But here's what they didn't know. I'd been documenting everything from day one. Every demand, every guilt trip, every financial manipulation. Because something told me this was going to get ugly, fast. What I did next changed everything. And 3 weeks later, karma came knocking in a way none of us saw coming. My family thought they could steamroll me into submission, but they had no idea who they were really dealing with. If this story moves you, or you've dealt with family financial drama, smash that like button and subscribe, because this gets absolutely wild. Trust me, you won't see the ending coming. My life before Ethel's return was a machine of discipline and purpose. Every morning at 6 a.m., I'd hit the gym in our neighborhood, then drive to the tech startup where I'd code for 12 hours straight. My colleagues thought I was obsessed, but they didn't understand what I was building toward. Sundays meant meal prep for the entire week, portioning out chicken and rice into containers while other people my age were nursing hangovers. I tracked every expense in a spreadsheet that would make accountants weep with joy. Coffee shop visits, gas, groceries, even the $5 I'd spend on energy drinks during late coding sessions. Living in that converted garage wasn't about being cheap. It was about sacrifice with purpose. The space was barely 400 square feet, with a hot plate for cooking and a Murphy bed that folded into the wall. But every month, I transferred exactly $2,200 to my parents' mortgage account and watched my savings grow. Weekends meant house hunting in East Austin. Driving through neighborhoods I'd researched obsessively. I had my eye on a specific 3-bedroom Craftsman on Weberville Road. Listed at $210,000, the seller's agent knew me by name. I'd run the numbers 1,000 times, calculated closing costs, property taxes, even factored in potential repairs. My $85,000 in savings would cover the down payment, closing costs, and leave me with a comfortable emergency fund. Then, Ethel's Honda Pilot pulled into our driveway at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, headlights cutting through my bedroom window. I heard car doors slamming, kids crying, and my sister's voice carrying across the yard like she owned the place. By the time I threw on clothes and walked outside, she was already directing my parents to grab suitcases from her trunk. "Felipe," she called out, like we were meeting for brunch instead of a middle-of-the-night family crisis. "Thank God you're here. I need to tell you what that monster put us through. 3 kids stumbled out of the back seat, ages 5 to 10, clutching stuffed animals and looking shell-shocked. But what caught my attention were the designer suitcases, the Louis Vuitton purse slung over Ethel's shoulder, and the fact that her Honda Pilot was a brand new model I'd seen advertised for $45,000. Within an hour, she'd completely reorganized our family dynamic. The kids were installed in my old bedroom, the one I'd grown up in, while Ethel claimed the master guest room like she was checking into a resort. Mom was already making hot chocolate and promising the kids they could stay as long as they needed. Dad was carrying suitcases and muttering about family sticking together. "It's just temporary," Ethel assured everyone, though she was already unpacking like she planned to redecorate. "Just until I get the settlement money and find us a place." The settlement money. She'd mentioned it 3 times in the first hour, this magical windfall that would solve all her problems. But I remembered her divorce settlement from 8 months ago, the $120,000 lump sum she'd received, the money that was supposed to set her up for years. "What happened to your settlement?" I asked during a quiet moment in the kitchen. Her face tightened. "Legal fees, moving expenses. The kids needed things. You wouldn't understand, Felipe. You don't have children depending on you." By morning, the financial requests began. First, it was groceries for the kids. Then school supplies, because they'd be enrolling locally. Then clothes, because they'd left everything behind. Each request came with a sob story, a guilt trip, or a reminder that family helps family. Mom cornered me after work that first week, her eyes red from crying. "She's your sister, Felipe. Those babies need stability. You have more money than you know what to do with." I stared at her, exhausted from a 14-hour coding session and coming home to chaos. "I worked 80-hour weeks for this money, Mom. Where was this energy when she was blowing through her divorce settlement?" "That's different," Mom snapped. "She was trying to start over. Now she needs our help." Dad's approach was more direct. He'd corner me in the garage apartment, arms crossed, disappointment radiating from every pore. "You're being selfish with your success, son. We raised you better than this." "I pay $2,200 a month toward your mortgage," I reminded him. "How is that selfish?" "That's different. That's rent. This is about helping family in crisis." But Ethel's manipulation was the most sophisticated. She'd have her kids ask me directly why I wouldn't help their mommy. She'd cry during family dinners about feeling abandoned by everyone. She'd make comments about how some people care more about money than family, always while looking directly at me. The bank statements I'd kept meticulously for 18 months told a different story. $2,200, transferred like clockwork on the first of every month. $39,600 I'd contributed to keeping their house out of foreclosure. But somehow, I was the selfish one. 3 weeks into Ethel's stay, I found mail addressed to me that I'd never seen before. Chase Bank, American Express, Capital One, all with my name, but account numbers I didn't recognize. My hands shook as I opened the first statement. $12,000 in charges. Private school tuition for Ethel's kids at St. Andrew's Academy, $1,500. Spa treatments at the Four Seasons, $800 for something called trauma therapy massage. Designer clothes from Nordstrom, $2,000 in a single shopping trip. Restaurant bills from places I'd never been. Hotel stays I'd never booked. I stormed into the main house, statements crumpled in my fist. Ethel was lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone while her kids watched cartoons. "You committed identity theft, Ethel. This is a federal crime." She barely looked up. Don't be so dramatic. I'm paying it back once I get my settlement money. Settlement money? I laughed bitterly. You already got your settlement. You blew through $120,000 in 8 months. That's different. This is just temporary cash flow. You'll get every penny back. Mom appeared from the kitchen, wringing her hands. Felipe, she just needed to establish some credit. It's not that serious. Not that serious? I held up the statements. She used my social security number to open accounts. My credit score is tanking because of her spa days and shopping sprees. Dad emerged from his office, jaw set. She's family. We all agreed to help her get back on her feet. We agreed. I never agreed to anything. You gave her permission to steal my identity? The silence that followed told me everything. They'd all known. They'd all been complicit in this fraud. And somehow, I was still the villain for being upset about it. My work started suffering immediately. The chaos at home bled into everything. I'd be in the middle of debugging code when one of Ethel's kids would start screaming in the main house. During important video calls with clients, she'd let them run through the background. Or worse, she'd knock on my garage door asking for money for emergencies. Last Tuesday, I was presenting a critical software update to our biggest client when her 8-year-old burst into my garage apartment, crying about a broken toy. The client saw everything, heard the chaos, watched me struggle to maintain professionalism while a child melted down in the background. I'm so sorry, I told the client afterward. Family situation. It won't happen again. But it did happen again. And again. Ethel seemed to time her interruptions perfectly, always during my most important calls. When I confronted her, she'd shrug and say the kids needed their uncle, that I was being cold and corporate. My code quality plummeted. I was making rookie mistakes, missing deadlines, showing up to meetings unprepared because I'd been up all night listening to arguments about custody arrangements and settlement money that might never come. Ian Carr, my supervisor, called me into his office on a Friday afternoon. His expression was grim. Your code quality has dropped 40% this quarter. What's going on? Felipe, family situation. I'll handle it. Handle it fast. We're looking at layoffs next month, and performance metrics are going to determine who stays. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. I like you, Felipe. You've been solid for 2 years, but I can't protect you if this continues. I walked back to my desk, my stomach in knots. The job I'd worked so hard to excel at, the career that was funding my dreams, was slipping away because of Ethel's chaos. And when I tried to explain this to my family, they acted like I was being dramatic. Jobs come and go, Mom said dismissively. Family is forever. I discovered the theft on a Monday morning while checking my account balance before transferring the monthly mortgage payment. My savings account, which should have shown $85,000, displayed $60,000. $25,000 gone. I called the bank immediately, my hands shaking as I waited on hold. The representative, a woman named Jennifer, pulled up my account with professional sympathy. The withdrawal was authorized by Edmund McManus on your joint account access. He provided proper identification and stated it was for a family emergency. Joint account access. I'd added Dad years ago when I was traveling for work, just in case something happened to me. I'd forgotten it was still active. What family emergency? I demanded when I confronted him that evening. She needed a good lawyer. You'll get it back when her settlement comes through. That was my money, Dad. You stole from me to fund her legal drama. I didn't steal anything. Your name is on the account, but this family has supported you your whole life. It's time you supported us back. The legal documents I found later told the whole story. Ethel was fighting her ex-husband for full custody, claiming he was abusive and unfit. The lawyer she'd hired charged $500 an hour. My $25,000 had bought her exactly 50 hours of legal representation for a case I knew nothing about. When I confronted Ethel, she had the audacity to seem annoyed that I was upset. "It's an investment in the kid's future," she said. "When I get full custody, the child support payments will be huge. You'll get your money back with interest." "You don't get to make investments with stolen money, Ethel. It's not stolen. It's family money." "God, you're so selfish." The family meeting was called for Sunday dinner, but I knew it was an ambush the moment I walked into the dining room. They'd prepared my favorite meal, pot roast with all the fixings, and everyone was smiling too brightly. "We need to talk about Ethel's future," Dad began, cutting into his meat with surgical precision. "She's got a business opportunity that could set her up for life." Ethel pulled out a folder, her eyes bright with fake enthusiasm. "It's a boutique consulting firm. I'd help divorced women navigate their new lives. The startup costs are only $30,000. I flipped through the business plan, my engineering mind immediately spotting the flaws. Unrealistic revenue projections, no market research, no actual business experience. And there, on page 3, my name listed as primary investor, with a contribution of $30,000. "I never agreed to this," I said, setting the folder down. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us?" Mom's voice cracked with practiced emotion. "What you've done for me. I've been paying your mortgage for 2 years. That's different," Dad snapped. "That's rent. This is about family investment, about believing in each other." Ethel started crying, right on cue. "I just want to be independent. I don't want to be a burden forever. This business could change everything." "With my money," I said flatly. "It's not just your money," Dad said, his voice rising. "This family has invested in you your whole life. College, living expenses, support when you were starting your career. Now it's time to invest back." The manipulation was so blatant, it took my breath away. They'd rewritten history, turning my rent payments into charity, my success into their investment, my money into family property. "I'm not funding this fantasy," I said, standing up from the table. The explosion was immediate. Dad's face turned red. Mom started sobbing, and Ethel accused me of destroying her children's future. The words, selfish, ungrateful, and heartless, flew around the room like weapons. The final straw came when I overheard Ethel talking to her 8-year-old son, Tommy, in the kitchen. "Uncle Felipe has lots of money, but he won't share it with us," she was saying, her voice dripping with manufactured sadness. "Some people care more about money than family." Tommy looked up at her with confused eyes. "Why does Uncle Felipe hate us, Mommy?" "He doesn't hate you, baby. He just doesn't want to help us not be homeless." I stood in the doorway, watching her poison her own child against me, and something inside me snapped. "Ethel, can I talk to you outside?" She followed me to the backyard, her expression defiant. "Stop using your kids as weapons," I said, my voice deadly calm. "I'm not using anyone. I'm telling them the truth. You have the power to help us, and you're choosing not to." The truth is, you've stolen my identity, destroyed my credit, cost me my job security, and stolen $25,000 from my savings. The truth is, you're a parasite. Her mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. "You think you're so much better than me, but you're just a lonely loser, living in a garage, paying Mommy and Daddy's bills." Dad must have heard us arguing, because he came storming outside, his face purple with rage. "What's going on out here?" Your son is being cruel to his sister and her children, Ethel said, immediately switching back to victim mode. I'm done, I said, looking Dad straight in the eye. I'm done with the manipulation, the theft, the guilt trips. I'm done funding this circus. Get out and never come back, Dad screamed, spittle flying from his mouth. You're no son of mine if you can't help your own blood. Fine, I said, my voice eerily calm. But when this all falls apart, don't come crying to me. I grabbed my laptop bag and walked out. But I had a final card to play that would change everything. I drove straight to Troy Mott's apartment, my hands still shaking from Dad's explosion. Troy had been my best friend since college. And more importantly, he was a financial advisor who'd seen every kind of family money drama imaginable. They did what? Troy's voice rose an octave as I laid out the whole story. We sat in his kitchen while I showed him the credit card statements, bank records, and business plan with my name forged as primary investor. Felipe, this isn't just family drama. This is serious financial crime. He grabbed his laptop and started pulling up legal websites. Identity theft, unauthorized account access, financial elder abuse if they're manipulating your parents' finances too. Elder abuse? Your dad withdrew $25,000 from your account without permission. If Ethel pressured him into it, that's financial manipulation of an elderly person. The feds take this stuff seriously. Troy made a call to Susan Yother, a lawyer he'd worked with on financial fraud cases. Within an hour, I was sitting in her downtown office, a sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lady Bird Lake. Susan reviewed my documents with the methodical precision of a surgeon. Credit reports showing accounts I'd never opened. Bank statements with unauthorized withdrawals. Screenshots of Ethel's Instagram showing designer purchases while she claimed poverty to my family. You have grounds for multiple felony charges, Susan said, her voice matter of fact. Identity theft, wire fraud, conspiracy if your parents were involved in the planning. Are you prepared for the family fallout? They made their choice when they chose her over me. Susan nodded approvingly. Good, because once we file these charges, there's no going back. Your sister could face 5 to 10 years in federal prison. Back at Troy's apartment, I spread everything across his dining table like a war room. Bank statements going back 18 months, showing my consistent $2,200 payments. Credit reports with Ethel's fraudulent accounts highlighted in red. Screenshots of her social media posts showing spa days and shopping sprees while crying poverty to our family. Look at this, I said, showing Troy her Facebook post from last week. A photo of her getting a $200 facial with the caption, "Self-care isn't selfish when you're healing from trauma." She posted this the same day she asked you for grocery money for the kids, Troy observed. I'd also installed a recording app on my phone, something Susan had suggested for any future family communications. Texas was a one-party consent state, meaning I could legally record conversations as long as I was part of them. The strategic decision crystallized as we worked through the evidence. I would stop all financial support immediately. No more mortgage payments, no more emergency funds, no more enabling their dysfunction. I would file identity theft charges with both local police and federal authorities, and I would demand full restitution for every fraudulent charge, every unauthorized withdrawal, every penny they'd stolen. They're going to lose the house, Troy said quietly. That's not my problem anymore. I've been propping up their lifestyle for 2 years while they treated me like an ATM. Time for them to face reality. Susan had given me a timeline. Filing the police report would take 1 day. The federal charges would take a week to process. Ethel would be arrested within 10 days, assuming the evidence was as solid as it appeared. "What about your parents?" Troy asked. "What about them?" "Dad told me to get out and never come back. Mom chose Ethel over me every single time. They made their bed." I thought about the house I'd been saving for, the Craftsman on Weberville Road. With my credit destroyed by Ethel's fraud, that dream was on hold indefinitely. But Susan assured me that once the criminal charges were filed and the fraudulent accounts were removed from my credit report, my score would recover within 6 months. "The beautiful thing about financial crimes," Susan had said, with a slight smile, "is that everything leaves a paper trail. Your sister was sloppy. She used your real information, made purchases in her own name, left digital footprints everywhere. This is going to be easier than most cases I handle." I spent that night at Troy's, planning my next moves. First, I'd find my own apartment, somewhere far from the family chaos. Second, I'd focus on rebuilding my work performance now that I'd be free from Ethel's sabotage. Third, I'd let the legal system handle the rest. "You sure about this?" Troy asked, as we reviewed the plan one final time. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The recording app on my phone buzzed with a missed call from Mom, then Dad, then Ethel. They were probably wondering where I'd gone, whether I'd cool off and come crawling back like I always did. But this time was different. This time, I had evidence, legal representation, and most importantly, I had finally reached my breaking point. What happened next would either destroy my family forever or finally teach them the value of the son they'd thrown away. Have you ever had family members steal from you? Drop a comment about how you handled it. I read every single one. Monday morning, I walked into Austin Community Bank at exactly 9 a.m. when they opened. The manager, a woman named Patricia, who'd handled my accounts for 3 years, looked concerned when I explained what I needed. "I want to remove all joint account access immediately," I said, sliding the paperwork across her desk. "And I need documentation of every withdrawal made by Edmund McManus in the past 6 months. Patricia's fingers flew across her keyboard. There were 3 withdrawals totaling $27,000. The largest was $25,000 on March 15th. I need printed records of all of that. And I'm closing the automatic transfer for the mortgage payment." Her eyebrows shot up. "The $2,200 monthly transfer? Are you sure?" "Completely sure." Next stop was Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. I placed fraud alerts on all 3 credit bureaus, froze my credit entirely, and filed formal identity theft reports. The representative at Experian walked me through the process with practiced sympathy. "We see this a lot with family members," she said. "The good news is that once you file criminal charges, these fraudulent accounts will be removed from your report entirely." By noon, I was at the courthouse with Susan, filing a civil lawsuit against Ethel for $37,000 in restitution. $25,000 stolen from my savings, $12,000 in fraudulent credit card charges. The process server would deliver the papers to my parents' house within 24 hours. "How do you think she'll react?" Susan asked as we walked down the courthouse steps. "Probably blame me for being vindictive. But that's not my problem anymore." The change at work was immediate and dramatic. Without Ethel's chaos bleeding into my professional life, I could focus completely on code for the first time in months. My productivity shot through the roof. Ian Carr noticed within a week, "Whatever you did to fix your family situation, keep doing it," he said, reviewing my latest project. "This is the best work you've done all year." The situation resolved itself, I replied, not mentioning that resolution involved criminal charges and a restraining order. 2 weeks later, Ian called me into his office with news that changed everything. We just landed the Morrison Industries contract, $2 million over 18 months. I want you leading the development team. Morrison Industries was the biggest client our startup had ever pursued. Leading their project would mean a promotion to senior developer and a salary bump to $95,000 annually. There's also a signing bonus, Ian continued, $15,000 paid immediately. I signed the contract that afternoon, my hand steady for the first time in months. The signing bonus hit my account within 48 hours, and I immediately started apartment hunting in downtown Austin. The place I found was a one-bedroom loft in the warehouse district, walking distance from work, with floor-to-ceiling windows and exposed brick walls. The rent was $1,800 monthly, but after 2 years of paying $2,200 for my parents' mortgage, it felt like a bargain. When can you move in? The landlord asked. This weekend. The criminal charges moved faster than Susan had predicted. Austin police arrested Ethel on a Tuesday morning, charging her with identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The federal charges followed 3 days later. The prosecutor loves this case, Susan told me over coffee. Your sister left a paper trail a mile long. Credit applications with your social security number, purchases made in her name with fraudulent accounts, text messages to friends bragging about her shopping sprees. The preliminary hearing was a masterclass in legal precision. Susan presented bank records, credit reports, and social media evidence with surgical efficiency. Ethel's public defender looked overwhelmed. Your Honor, Susan addressed the judge. The defendant systematically stole my client's identity to fund a lifestyle she couldn't afford. The evidence is overwhelming, and the damages are substantial. Ethel sat at the defendant's table, no longer the confident manipulator who'd taken over my family's house. She looked small, defeated, and for the first time since this whole mess started, genuinely scared. The judge reviewed the evidence with methodical care. Bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals, credit card applications with forged signatures, screenshots of Ethel's social media posts showing expensive purchases while claiming poverty. The court finds sufficient evidence to proceed with all charges, the judge announced. The defendant will remain in custody pending trial, unless she can post $50,000 bail. The civil case concluded 2 weeks later. Susan had negotiated a settlement that avoided a lengthy trial. The judge awarded full restitution plus $15,000 in damages. Susan told me afterward. She has 90 days to pay or face jail time. Good, I replied, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Actions have consequences. The restitution order was comprehensive. $37,000 for the stolen money and fraudulent charges, plus $15,000 in damages for credit repair, legal fees, and emotional distress. $52,000 total, due within 90 days. My credit score recovered within 6 weeks, once the fraudulent accounts were removed. The 3 credit bureaus flagged my file as an identity theft victim, which actually gave me additional protections going forward. Standing in my new apartment, looking out at the Austin skyline, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. My phone was silent, no longer buzzing with guilt trips and financial demands. My bank account was growing again, fed by my new salary and unencumbered by family obligations. The Craftsman house on Weberville Road was still for sale, with my credit restored and my income increased. I could afford it now. But I wasn't ready yet. I wanted to enjoy this freedom, this independence, this life where my money was actually mine. The foreclosure notice arrived at my parents' house exactly 60 days after I stopped the mortgage payments. Troy forwarded me a photo that a mutual friend had taken. The bright yellow paper taped to their front door like a scarlet letter. Notice of default. It read in bold letters, payment of $2,200 is 60 days as due. Without my monthly contributions, their financial house of cards collapsed immediately. Dad's retirement income barely covered utilities and groceries. Mom's part-time job at the library brought in maybe $800 monthly. They'd been living off my subsidies for years without realizing it. The bank wasn't sympathetic to their sudden hardship. 40 years of home ownership meant nothing when the payments stopped coming. The mortgage officer, a man named David Chen, had called them repeatedly offering payment plans and modifications, but without my income supporting them, none of the options were viable. We need at least $1,500 monthly to avoid foreclosure, he'd told them during their final meeting. Can you guarantee that income? They couldn't, not even close. Ethel's business venture died before it even launched. The $30,000 she'd demanded from me was supposed to cover startup costs, but without that funding, her boutique consulting firm remained a fantasy. The business plan she'd shown me, with its unrealistic projections and my name forged as primary investor, became evidence in her criminal trial. Worse, the creditors from her previous spending sprees started circling. Collection agencies called daily, demanding payment on maxed-out credit cards and unpaid loans. The designer clothes, spa treatments, and private school tuition had all been purchased on credit, with promises of future settlement money that never materialized. Her ex-husband's lawyer had been smart, structuring her original divorce settlement to prevent exactly this kind of reckless spending. The money was gone, and there would be no more coming. The family unity that had been weaponized against me crumbled under financial pressure. Dad blamed Mom for coddling Ethel. Mom blamed Dad for driving away their only source of income. And both of them blamed Ethel for destroying their relationship with me. "This is all your fault," I heard Dad screaming during one of their fights, his voice carrying through the phone when Mom accidentally called me. "We had a good thing with Felipe, and you ruined it with your selfishness." "I ruined it," Ethel screamed back. "You're the one who told him to get out and never come back. Because you convinced us he was being selfish. Now look where we are." The irony wasn't lost on me. The same people who'd called me selfish for protecting my money were now turning on each other when that money disappeared. Mom called first, her voice broken and desperate. "Please, Felipe, we'll lose everything. I'm sorry we chose her over you. You made your bed, Mom. Now lie in it. But this is our home. 40 years of memories. Your childhood bedroom is still exactly how you left it. My childhood bedroom that you gave to Ethel's kids without asking me." The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of manipulation and favoritism finally coming to light. I could hear her crying, but for the first time, her tears didn't move me. "I know we made mistakes," she whispered, "but we're family. Doesn't that mean anything? Family means supporting each other, not using each other. You taught me that lesson the hard way." Dad's call came a week later, his pride clearly shattered. "Son, I was wrong. I let your sister manipulate me into thinking you were being selfish. Can you forgive an old fool?" "Forgiveness and financial support are two different things, Dad. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for my son back. Your son was paying $2,200 a month to keep your house while living in a garage. Where was this energy when Ethel was stealing from me? His voice cracked. I thought we were protecting family. I didn't realize we were destroying it. You weren't protecting family. You were enabling a criminal. Ethel's call was the most pathetic. She was crying, hyperventilating, threatening to hurt herself when the 90-day restitution deadline approached. I don't have $52,000, Felipe. If I go to jail, what happens to my kids? You should have thought about that before you stole my identity. Please, I'm begging you. I'll do anything. I'll pay you back slowly. I promise. The court order says 90 days. That's not my decision anymore. You're destroying our family over money. I didn't destroy anything, Ethel. You did that when you chose fraud over honesty. 6 months after walking out of that garage apartment, my life was unrecognizable. The downtown loft had become a sanctuary where I could code without interruption, work out without guilt trips, and date without family drama bleeding into every conversation. I'd started seeing Sarah, a marketing director I'd met at a tech conference. She knew nothing about my family situation, which was exactly how I wanted it. Our relationship was built on mutual respect and shared interests, not obligation and manipulation. You seem so peaceful, she told me one evening as we cooked dinner together. Like you figured something out that most people haven't. I learned the difference between family and people who happen to share your DNA. My career trajectory shot upward without the constant chaos. The Morrison Industries project was so successful that our startup got acquired by a larger firm. My new title was Principal Software Architect, with a salary of $150,000 annually. The Craftsman House on Weberville Road was still available, and with my improved financial situation, I bought it outright. No mortgage, no monthly payments to anyone. Complete ownership of something beautiful that was entirely mine. Standing in my new kitchen, looking out at the backyard where I'd plant a garden, I felt a satisfaction deeper than revenge. This was what life looked like when you stopped enabling dysfunction and started prioritizing your own well-being. The lesson wasn't about money, though money had been the weapon they'd used against me. The lesson was about boundaries, about recognizing that setting limits isn't cruel. It's necessary. Family doesn't get to abuse you just because they share your blood. My phone buzzed with another call from Mom. I let it go to voicemail. Just like all the others, some bridges, once burned, aren't meant to be rebuilt. And sometimes, that's exactly how it should be. What's the most toxic family situation you've escaped from? Share your story in the comments. Let's support each other. And if this inspired you to set your own boundaries, hit that subscribe button for more stories of people who chose themselves.